Hello everybody, it's Snowflarky here today to bring you my Amazonas deck profile. This is one of my longtime favorite casual slash for fun decks that I became a big fan of due to their battle phase centric effects that I've always been a big fan of battle phase interactions. And unfortunately, in the current metagame, the battle phase is kind of non-existent, so definitely limits the potential of this deck incredibly. But when you have a fun casual setting, it's really cool to bust out. And there's some really cool interactions in here that made me a fan of the deck long ago. And then, of course, when they got the support from Legendary Duelists, it only boosted it up further. Very glad to have it and to be showing it off. So without further ado, let's get into the cards. Starting off with our monsters, we are playing 3 Amazonas Princess. This is the heart and soul of the Amazonas deck. Its name becomes Amazonas Queen, which oftentimes is important for doing your fusion plays. In this deck, however, we will not be playing any of the fusions. They're frankly just not good enough, especially without an archetype exclusive fusion spell. Using polymerization, negging on card advantage for them is not that great. But if you want to play fusions, this card does become Amazonas Queen, and when you summon it, you can essentially add any Amazonas spell or trap card from the deck to your hand. You'll be using this to get whichever Amazonas card you need most at one point. And of course, once per turn during the battle, if you declare an attack with this card, you could discard a card from your hand to special summon an Amazonas monster from your deck. So this is used to get whichever Amazonas monster you need out of the deck at any time. Thins the deck, gets more field presence. Definitely a great card to have. Next up, I'm playing 2 Amazonas Queen. This is definitely one of the monsters you'll probably want to be summoning off Amazonas Princess effect the most. The other way we have to get it off is through the Amazonas Trap card that you'll see later. But a Queen essentially provides the largest body on a main deck Amazonas monster, 2,400, and has a pretty solid effect that Amazonas monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle. That does include herself. That definitely comes in handy because there's a lot of ramming that goes on in this deck where you're smacking into battles that you're not going to win, so not losing your monster off of that is pretty important. So we definitely like to see Amazonas Queen. Next up, for the rest of the Amazonas monsters, I am playing 2 of the Amazonas monsters that I deem useful to my strategy. First off, we have the 2 Chainmaster. Now, Chainmaster is a very interesting one that has a very silly play, a very silly interaction where when this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can pay 1,500 life points to look at your opponent's hand and take a monster from it and put it in your hand. I'm a really big fan of that effect, being able to take a key combo piece out of an opponent's hand and then also get hand knowledge is definitely worth, um, especially with the creature swap and Amazonas Village interaction that we'll show later in the deck. You can get a lot of card advantage off of that. So sometimes, you want to get a key combo piece out of their hand, they search for it, you want to steal it, Amazonas Chainmaster can get that done. After that, I am playing 2 copies of Amazonas Sage. This is a 1400 attack Amazonas that at the end of the damage step, if this card attacked and is still on the field, you can target a spell or trap card on the field and destroy it. So this card is our spell and trap removal in form of a monster. If you're playing against back row heavy decks or need to take out a very crucial card, we'll go into Sage, get Sage on board, start attacking and popping spell and trap cards. Next, I am playing 2 copies of Amazonas Swordswoman. This Amazon monster, when you would take battle damage from a battle involving this card, your opponent takes it instead, and that is a pretty important part of the Amazon playstyle. Like I said, we'll be doing lots of battles where our monster is not actually the highest attack power, so using Warrior's effect to give that damage to your opponent will help burn them and is a important tool to getting their life points down to 0. Last off, for the one-ofs, we are playing the big finishers. One copy of Amazonas Paladin, 1700 attack monster that gains 100 attack for each other Amazonas monster on the field. This just becomes one of the easiest, largest bodies to summon, so we definitely play it for when the opponent has an open field and we want to get in some more damage. And one copy of Amazonas Tiger. This you can only control one Amazonas Tiger, but this card gains 400 attack for each Amazonas monster you control, so that also makes it pretty large attack stat on a built-up board, and that damage is important for closing out a game. That is the monster lineup. Next up, getting into our spells, I am playing 3 copies of Amazonas Village. This is the Amazonas field spell, also important to keep the deck moving. It gives all Amazonas monsters on the field 200 attack, but most importantly, when an Amazonas monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to the graveyard, you get to special summon an Amazonas monster from your deck with the same level or a lower level. So this will let your destroyed Amazonas flow into other Amazonas monsters. Oftentimes we'll be using this to get in a princess summon on an opponent's turn and get another search off, so that on our next turn we might be able to normal summon a princess, just keep things moving, keep gaining card advantage. Of course, you can go into any of the other Amazonas that you need. Maybe you want to steal a card with Chainmaster, or you want to threaten your opponent with damage with Swordswoman. So whichever one you need, Village can get it to you. Very important card to making it all work. Since we want to see Village, we are of course playing a copy of Terraforming. It grabs us Village, pretty important. Next up, we have 3 copies of Amazonas Call. This is the spell searcher of the deck. It can grab you any Amazonas card, so that includes monsters, spells, and traps, and you either add it to your hand or send it to the graveyard. Usually I'm adding something to the hand. I don't find too many times where I want to send something to the graveyard. It may be more useful in a build if you're playing lots of Graveyard Revival, or if you wanted to play Necrofusion to summon the fusions. Dump something in there. You've already done your summon. But usually adding something to the hand is enough for me. And it also has a secondary effect that you can banish this card from your graveyard to select an Amazonas monster on your side of the field. Nothing else can attack, but that Amazonas monster is going to be able to attack all your opponent's monsters. And that is often important for clearing a board, especially when you have the trap card set up. That'll let you banish everything you attack. We'll talk about that in a bit. Playing 1 copy of Reinforcement of the Army. Everything's a warrior. We really want to see Amazonas Princess to get things moving. We're playing Reinforcement of the Army. Next up, this is definitely one of my fun options that I really love about this deck. It is Creature Swap. Creature Swap is a spell card that you and your opponent have to have a monster. You both select a monster on your side of the field, and you swap those monsters. Now, the reason we do this is because of the interaction with Amazonas Village. If you give your opponent an Amazonas monster, and then you attack the Amazonas monster on their side of the field, and it goes to your graveyard, you still get the summon off of Amazonas Village. And you can go even further with Chainmaster and steal a card from your hand, and that can gain you a lot of card advantage. Next up, playing 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance. The extra deck is not as important in this deck as getting card advantage. There's not a lot of ways to build like an extra deck auto win board with this kind of play, so I better off use it to become a +1. We definitely want to see Extravagance. One copy of Supply Squad. This is definitely cuttable for something more effective, but I like Supply Squad to keep things moving. You're letting your monsters die a lot, rather you're ramming them on your turn or you're letting them get destroyed, and then you're getting ones out of the deck. So I figure you might as well also draw a card occasionally. Um, it's pretty solid. Get you some stuff just a one of. And then, of course, one Monster Reborn. Sometimes you need a crucial Amazonas back on the field from the graveyard or another body to boost the ones that get attacks from more. Get some more monsters, push for more damage. We want to see it. And that is it for the spell lineup. Next, moving into our trap cards, we are playing 3 copies of Amazonas Onslaught. Amazonas Onslaught is almost the win con of the deck, essentially. It allows you to once per turn during the battle phase special summon an Amazonas monster from your hand, which allows you to get some swarm going on. That Amazonas monster gains 500 attack until the end of the turn, extra attack boost for more damage. But most importantly, after damage calculation, if your Amazonas monster battled an opponent's monster with this card, you can banish that monster. So anytime your opponent battles an Amazonas monster while this card is up, you can just banish it. Non-targeting, non-destruction, banish removal. Definitely pretty powerful. Can be used to get rid of most things, and your opponents will not be happy with you doing that. We play 3 copies of this card because your opponents will be trying to remove it. We want to see it right away, and we want it to stay right away. The card does have an additional effect that when it gets destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can target an Amazonas monster in your graveyard and special summon it. Pretty good. You can grab a princess to grab another one if you know you're going to need it, or just any Amazonas you can get your hand on. So a little bit of a compensation for it getting destroyed. But, usually keeping it alive is way more important. So, protect your Amazonas Onslaught. Next, since Amazon is a weaker deck, I gotta play some equalizers. So we are playing some floodgates. These cards are often gonna be what really wins the match when you play, just because you'll just hinder your opponent enough. So we're playing 1 copy of Skill Drain. You pay 1,000 life points. All effects are negated while the monsters are face up on the field. The Amazonas have some pretty good effects, but they're probably not as good as your opponent's monster effects. So turning them off and then just making use of the bodies to float with the village and banish remove monsters is usually pretty good. Oftentimes can win the game on its own, so we definitely like seeing Skill Drain. Next, I am playing 1 copy of Rivalry of the Warlords. This makes it so that each player can only control 1 type of monster. All the Amazonas monsters except for Tiger are warriors. So you can play it without getting punished, and it can certainly stop an opponent who's trying to build a board of different monster types. It'll set them back quite a bit. So Rivalry of the Warlords, pretty good. And then I am playing 2 copies of Goes and Match. All the Amazonas monsters, including Tiger this time, are Earth. So Goes and Match makes it so each player can only control 1 attribute. And that, of course, can also hinder your opponent pretty well. Your floodgates, of course, can be adjusted to whatever your matchups are, whatever you're playing against. These ones have been doing work for me right now against what my dueling group plays. Always when you're playing these kind of trap cards, you have to be ready to adjust your trap lineup based on whatever you're up against. So those are kind of the floodgate win cons. Moving on to some other things, I'm playing 2 copies of Waking the Dragon. We're playing lots of spell and trap cards, lots of back row, and I don't want to be completely defenseless against an opponent who wants to have Harpy's Feathers Duster or Lightning Storm. I want to punish the big board wipes that are running around. So Waking the Dragon does that pretty well. You can play some big monsters in your extra deck that can be a win con if your opponent pops Waking the Dragon and are not prepared to deal with the answer that you will summon. After that, I'm playing 2 copies of Solemn Judgment. This is in here. Sometimes you need to protect your floodgate at all costs, or you need to protect a board just for a little bit to get damage in on the next turn. Your judgments are your 1-card no to something. If something's going to be really bad, if something's going to stop you from being able to finish it off next turn, you Solemn Judgment it, gives you that ability to force your opponent to end. Um, Very good. And of course, 1 copy of Heavy Storm Duster. You can definitely play more copies of this, shift those trap ratios around, but I just play 1. Back row can sometimes be a problem. If back row is being more of a problem, I'll side in more. So, we like Heavy Storm Duster. It allows you to target up to 2 spell and trap cards, destroy it in exchange for your battle phase. That plus card advantage, big fan of. So, Heavy Storm Duster as the final trap. And that is it for the main deck. Getting into the extra deck, most of our extra deck are either Waking the Dragon targets or good rank 4s, given that most of the Amazonas are rank 4s. To start, we'll go with Baguska. Baguska is probably the one I end up finding myself summoning the most. If you summon it in defense mode, it's just a skill drain on a body for 2 turns. And sometimes that's what you need to buy yourself 2 turns, get a couple of extra cards, and then make your play at a later time. So definitely like seeing Baguska. Next is Heroic Champion, Gan Diva. This card essentially lets you negate the summon, the special summon of a level 4 or lower monster. In certain matchups, that's pretty nice to have. Detach a material, negate a summon. You can halt an opponent's turn. Pretty good card. It requires 2 warriors, so Amazonas can definitely make it. Next, I am playing 2 copies of Abyss Dweller. This is one of the better ones, so I'm playing 2 copies of it, just so I don't banish them all off of Extravagance. You can't get the attack boost because nothing's water monster, but you quick effect detach a material, and your opponent cannot activate any card effects in the graveyard this turn. So many graveyard-centric card effects that been able to say no to that, hinder your opponent. Very powerful. Next, I'm playing 1 copy of the Gagaga Cowboy. This is a very battle phase centric deck where you can press a lot of damage, and oftentimes I find that I'm just a little bit of damage off lethal. Well, good old Gagaga Cowboy can detach 1 for an 800 life point damage burn, and that will push it through. Next, running a Castel, the Sky Blaster Musketeer. You detach the 2 materials to take a card on the field and shuffle it back into the deck. Very important to spin a card that is annoying, bothersome. We like to have it. Next, we're playing Blade Armor Ninja. Requires 2 level 4 warrior type monsters. You detach a material from it, then you can target a ninja monster on the field, and it can attack twice this battle phase. Normally you target it, since it's the only ninja played in the deck, and it allows you to attack twice, 4,400 damage. Pretty important for calculating an OTK. Can definitely facilitate it. And last, for the standard rank 4, is playing a Tornado Dragon. You quick effect detach a material to destroy a spell or trap card on the field. Very good. Get rid of pesky spell or traps that are inhibiting you. For the rest of the extra deck, we are playing targets that we want to summon off of a popped Waking the Dragon. That includes 1 copy of Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon. If I had 3 copies, I would run it, but I only have 1, so we're just playing the 1 Ultimate Falcon. Definitely the one that you normally want to summon. Next up, I am playing Yugioh Mathmech Final Sigma, 3000 attack monster that if you special summon in the extra monster zone is unaffected by card effects except Mathmech cards. Makes it pretty hard to deal with. I would sub 2 of these out for 2 more Ultimate Falcons if I had it, but I'll just run the Final Sigmas instead. It does have an effect where if you do battle damage through battle with a monster, the damage is doubled. That's pretty cool. And then next up, 3 copies of the Blue Eyes Alternative Ultimate Dragon, 4,500 attack monster. Now, unlike the other two, it's not unaffected by card effects, but it cannot be targeted or destroyed, which in some matchups is good enough, and having that 4,500 attack power or the ability to just pop a card on the field is definitely worth it. And that is it for our extra deck. Now that we're through the card by card, there was a couple things that I've done previously and interactions that I wanted to talk about a little more, so I figured I'd tag it on to the edge of the video. First off, I kind of wanted to talk about my favorite play, the play that made me originally fall in love with this deck involving these 3 cards. So I briefly explained it earlier, but essentially if you have Amazonas Village on the field, you can summon Chainmaster in either attack or defense. You got your Chainmaster on the field, and if your opponent has a monster too, then after that you can play Creature Swap. As long as you have another monster or the monster that they're going to give you is stronger than Chainmaster, then this play should work. You will give them your Chainmaster. They will give you something else, something that's stronger, maybe a Final Sigma, or you already have a stronger monster on board. So you take your opponent's monster and then you give them Chainmaster. Now Chainmaster is on their side of the field. At this point, you will attack in the battle phase. You will attack your own Chainmaster. Chainmaster will get destroyed and go to the graveyard. That will activate the effect of Amazonas Village, allowing you to summon another monster to your side of the field. So a monster has been removed from your opponent's side of the field, and you are getting a monster. That's pretty cool. And then of course, if it's Chainmaster that got destroyed, since it got destroyed and goes to your graveyard, you can activate its effect to pay 1,500 life points and take a monster card from your opponent's hand. That play is very wacky, very silly, and I enjoy it a lot. It definitely is the play that when I saw that interaction first come through in some kind of video, I can't remember what it was a long time ago, that I definitely went ahead and built the deck. You can of course creature swap any Amazonas and still get the summon off of the village, and that's pretty nice. Chainmaster just takes it a little bit further, stealing a card from the hand. Definitely a fun play. Another thing I wanted to talk about is sometimes in the past I have opted to play a Heroic Challenger package where I am playing the 3 of Assault Halberd and then the Heroic Challenger Thousand Blades. Now when you do this and have access to Thousand Blades, which you can summon from your graveyard constantly just by taking damage, that gives you a lot more ability to do rank 4 plays. And given that Amazonas is a battle phase centric deck, there's often a lot of times where I'll do a build of this deck that is completely kind of blind going second. I'll sub out the trap cards for good hand traps and just other going second blowout cards, things to answer turn 1 boards. And when you do that, you can make kind of big OTK plays, and the Heroic Challenger Assault Halberds are pretty nice because if your opponent controls a monster and you don't, you can summon it like Cyber Dragon. It gets piercing damage, which is nice, and then when it afflicts battle damage, you can search a Heroic Challenger card, put it in the deck, from the deck to your hand. Normally you'll add the Thousand Blades, then if you have like an Amazonas Princess on board, you can discard Blades to get it into the graveyard and get it live. And it's even really fun. It works well with the creature swap interaction to summon a Assault Halberd. It can definitely get over your Chainmaster. Then you normal summon Chainmaster, give them Chainmaster with the creature swap, attack with the Assault Halberd. You'll get a card from your deck, you'll get a card from their hand, you'll get an Amazonas monster on the field from Village. Definitely very fun way to include the Heroic Challenger cards in a deck. And yes, very important to consider that going second is sometimes the right call. Alright, that is everything I wanted to talk about in this video. I hope you all enjoyed the Amazonas deck profile. It's a very fun deck to bust out with my friends and, get some duels in, get some wacky battle phase interactions going. Certainly not a competitively viable deck in any way, but, if I got it's good. It's a good pickup for a friendly game, which is pretty nice. Maybe in the future I'll try to figure out how to do the fusions. I do have fusion deployment, and fusion deployment can pop Amazona's Queen out of the deck or Tiger out of the deck for a free special summon since they're listed on their fusion monsters. Definitely something I'll be looking into. Just haven't figured it out yet. Still just playing it as pure main deck goodness. But thanks everyone for tuning into the video. Hope you enjoyed it. Big fan of Amazonas. Love to talk about the deck, especially if you play an Amazonas build. Love to hear what's going on. It doesn't get a lot of talk going on about it. So, would be happy to engage in that conversation. Otherwise, folks, thanks for sticking around. I'll catch you in the next one.